Last week I covered how I'd want the character creator to work in my ideal Fallout game that I've been pitching. You hear me, Bethesda? Fallout Raiders of New York is already a series on my channel. Feel free to reach out if you want to turn it into the next Fallout game and pay me a boatload of cash so I can finally make a profit. But for those of you who aren't Bethesda employees, the thing that's important is that I said in my last video that my leveling system needed a whole video of its own. So today, that's what I'll be covering. To start off, let's go over how you as the player would level up, and immediately it's a touch more complicated than recent Fallout games, because there's two leveling systems working in tangent. The first system is pretty familiar, as it's the standard character level system. Discover locations, kill enemies, complete quests, do these sorts of things, and you gain XP, which will push you from level 1 to level 2, then level 2 to level 3, so on and so forth. Every time you increase your character level, you get to pick a perk, something which we'll be going over in depth later in the video. The other leveling system will also be familiar to almost all of you, not because it's a Fallout based one, but because I'm stealing it from Skyrim. In Skyrim you have different skills which increase in their own specific levels when used. Create a potion and your alchemy skill goes up. Hit an enemy with an arrow and your archery skill goes up. It's a system which logically makes sense, as the more you do something, the better you get at it. But I've decided that in my Fallout game, I don't want this skill system directly linked to character leveling. In the words of the Offspring,
you gotta keep them separated.
If you trade with a merchant, then your speech skill would increase. However, this wouldn't affect your overall character level XP bar. To explain this as clearly as possible, let's go through a hypothetical example. Let's say from the very start of the game, you were able to avoid doing anything which raised any of your skills. However, you complete a quest and get character XP for it, taking you up to level 2 and letting you choose your first perk. You've leveled up your character, but haven't leveled up any skills. Conversely, let's say you avoided earning any XP for your character, but sold a bunch of items. Your speech skill would go up, but your character level would stay the same. This skill going up would not give you access to a perk, but instead just make you better at what the skill represents. Maybe before your speech skill increases you sell a stim pack for 25 caps, but after it's gone up a rank you can start selling them for 27 caps. To put it simply, you unlock perks by leveling up your character in the same way you would in Fallout 4. But to increase how good your character is at things like shooting guns, using medicine, and crafting items, you would need to raise the relevant skills. Hopefully this makes it clear to all of you. If not, I have failed. But hopefully there'll be still some stuff in this video that you can enjoy. Let's take a closer look at the 10 skills characters would have. These are guns, energy weapons, melee weapons, explosives, medicine, survival, repair, science, sneak, and speech. The first 4 skills correlate to different types of weapons, and the remaining skills cover various different things you can do. Cooking a meal comes under survival, picking a lock comes under sneak, and using a stim pack comes under medicine. You'll level each of these skills up by doing the activities which relate to them throughout the game. I'd also want there to be skill trainers and skill books, but that's not critical information for this series. The effect of the skills will be familiar to anyone who's played some of the older Fallout games. Specifically, I'd say the closest comparison would be to Fallout 3 and New Vegas, as these skills increase up to 100, which is exactly how I'd want my skills to work. For those not familiar, don't fear, it's a fairly simple system. Say your gun skill is very low. This means you have less accuracy and deal less damage with a weapon than you normally would. The added blue makes it harder to hit your foe, and the reduced damage means you're not as strong as someone who is skilled with guns. A character who had maxed out their gun skill at 100 would find themselves as accurate as possible with their firearms, and dealing the maximum damage with them too. Just like is demonstrated clearly in New Vegas, your starting special stats would determine how high your skills are at the beginning of the game, and I also like the idea of tagging a few skills to boost them up a little right from the get-go. When it comes to raising skills though, things differ from New Vegas, where you'd level up your character and then just pick whatever you want to become more skilled at. In my game, you'd need to actually do the thing to get better at it. This means that characters who use energy weapons regularly throughout the game will get steadily better with them as time goes on. Honestly, I really love this meshing together of Fallout and Skyrim leveling systems, but I have no idea if any of you watching will like it, so let me know, as I really am curious how this is all being received. With skills covered, I think it's time to get talking about perks. I spent a couple of days coming up with a spreadsheet of important example perks to showcase, and ended up writing 41 of them. I'm betting there's not many of you who want me to talk about 41 different perks in detail, so instead of that I'll talk about them in groups, and show snippets of my spreadsheet as I do. To start off, let's look at the initial perk selection. Here are the 8 different perks you would potentially get to choose from the first time your character levels up. I say potentially because there are requirements for every perk. The first of these is a level requirement. As you reach higher levels, stronger perks will be available to you, helping to ensure you can become more powerful as the game goes on. With these initial perks, we also see the additional requirement of having a minimum special stat for most of them. If you have less than 4 points in endurance, then you would not be able to select the toughness perk. Each of the perks that has a special requirement represents the stat in some way, which helps to differentiate characters from each other a little bit. A character with high strength has the option to get huge amounts of carry weight, while one with high endurance will be even harder to kill than you might initially expect. This will really help with builds, making it easy to create characters who fit into standard archetypes. You may also have noticed that a few of these perks have ranks, meaning they can be selected that number of times. This means that a player could spend each of their first 10 level ups just increasing their special stats, ignoring any other perks which are unlocked as time goes by. With many perks though, being able to stack the effect multiple times just wouldn't work, so not every perk can be chosen more than once. Next group of perks is the crafting set. Only a couple of things to say about them. First up, I like the idea of crafting perks. I enjoy crafting systems in games, although I do think they should never be a requirement to use if you want to be able to progress through the game. Added thing with these perks I've included is that the additional ranks of a perk wouldn't be selectable straight away. Instead, each rank would have its own level unlock. This just helps to prevent the strongest of equipment upgrades from being unlocked right at the very start of the game, but also doesn't mean you have to wait long before you can start making significant improvements to your gear. Alrighty, next up we have a selection of standard combat perks. Now I hate it when a huge number of perks do nothing but add a flat damage boost to a type of weapon. It makes the perks must-haves that don't do anything interesting. The worst offender for this has to be Fallout 76, where you have to spend 9 points to max out the damage for your chosen weapon type, really restricting you in your perk choices, and preventing you from choosing anything that increases the fun of the game or makes your build feel different from others you might play. If you take a look at the perks I've come up with, most of them still correlate to a certain weapon type, but they try and do something interesting with it. You Don't Need to Be a Better Shot is unlocked at rank 22, and doubles your fire rate with automatic rifles, providing you're strong enough to keep hold of them while they're spitting out lead. Killing Weapon makes shotguns ideal for a finishing weapon, making them a guaranteed kill towards any enemies with less than 10% of their health remaining. Not every damage perk is related to a weapon though. I Am David gets you dealing a flat 10% more damage to large enemies, anything bigger than your standard super mutant, and is fueled by belief in yourself, so I decided to put a charisma restriction on it. That's right, charisma characters, you don't have to just talk people out of fighting, you can talk yourself up too. As well as having perks which relate to weapon types, I also wanted to have perks related to the skills you've leveled up. Each of these perks is only available to characters who have the respective skill at 50 or higher. Start to get to grips with explosives, and you double their radius with the Big Bada Boom perk. The Disciple of Grognak perk will make your melee attacks stagger enemies, a great bonus for those of you who like close combat. And as a quick aside, yes, Unarmed is included in the melee weapon skill. My favourite of these 50 plus skill perks has to be Ready to Give Up. This is a super fun perk, which would make it so that enemies who are alone and have taken a fair bit of damage will attempt to surrender, understanding that they're not going to win the fight and begging for mercy instead. And this perk is under the speech skill, because if it's not already clear, I want to do more stuff with standard charisma builds than just talking away around every single combat encounter. So those were some of the mid-tier skill perks. But what happens when you're at a high character level and have a skill maxed out? What kind of perks are available then? Overpowered perks, that's what. The way I see it, once you've gone through most of the game, you've earned the right to start feeling a little godlike. So I've put some really powerful perks under these requirements. Because they are quite so strong, I've also got some special requirements thrown in there too. Got to make it so you can't pick up every single one of these perks with ease after all. Okay, I'm going to talk about just a couple of the perks out loud, as you'll be able to see them all anyway. Cyber Commando is a reference to one of my earliest Fallout builds on this channel, and makes energy weapon attacks ricochet. Just picture it, lasers bouncing off every surface, and making it so that you never need to aim too carefully. They're Not That Strong is an arrogant sounding perk, which reduces the damage you take from enemies by 15%, providing you've killed 100 of their type. You're a survivor of Deathclaws, Raiders, or whatever else. You know how to handle their attacks now. Finally, we have the max rank speech perk, Cult of Personality. This makes it so your reputation does not decrease. And right now, this means nothing, because I've not done my reputation and karma video yet. But to give you a sneak peek, factions will view you differently depending on how much they like or dislike you. Get a faction to hate you enough, and they will turn hostile. Unlock this perk, and any faction you're not already hostile with won't ever view you as a real threat, constantly just waving away any of the bad things you do because they think you're just that cool. Now, there is one final thing to cover when it comes to perks, but fear not, I won't be showing you more spreadsheets. Nope, final thing to talk about is how not all perks would come about from levelling up your character. I'd also want some of them tucked away behind certain quests, killing specific boss-based enemies, maxing out relationships with characters, and a few other random things here and there. Fallout 4 did this to some extent, with most of the followers having perks that you got by maxing out your relationship with them, and the bigger DLCs gave you different perks depending on how you finished them. I really like all of this, so I'd want the same, but more. You've all been very good to listen to me go on about skills and perks, so as a reward, next week I'll talk about pirates instead. Genuinely though, thanks so much to those of you who have watched the video to this point. It's a much more stat-based one than something like the faction videos, so I really do appreciate those who are invested in every part of this series. And starting next week, it won't just be this series on the channel. I'm going to be updating my schedule and doing challenge run videos on Mondays and Wednesdays. I'm not 100% certain what challenge runs I'll do yet, but that's something for future Sarge to figure out. For past Sarge, all that matters is getting this script done and the video made, so I think I'll end things here. As always, thanks for watching. Sarge out.